Just a quiet moment on a Sunday morning when I looked in my wife's purse and pulled out something that didn't belong to her. Expensive. Not her style. Inexplicable. When I asked her about it, she smiled, lied without batting an eye. And then everything changed. Over the next few weeks, I learned more than I was prepared to hear. About a secret life, a familiar name, betrayal that ran deeper than I could have imagined. I didn't argue with her. I didn't yell. I just became a ghost in her life. Then came a silent war. A trial. The truth, which hit harder than I expected. But let's go back to the beginning of the story. My name's Dan. I'm a 38, work in systems integration for industrial software. Not flashy, but it pays well and keeps my hands and brain busy. Until a while back, I was married to Greta. 6 years married, 8 together. Greta, she turned heads. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made people forget their own names. Tall, perfect posture, dark red hair that she always wore loose around her shoulders. Her voice was smooth, and she had this way of tilting her head when she listened to you that made you feel like the only person in the world. She was an event planner. Conferences, corporate parties, those fancy galas where people toast champagne and pretend they aren't bored. She worked odd hours. Sometimes she'd come home just before midnight, slipping her heels off at the door like nothing was wrong. And for years, I didn't question it. I thought we had an understanding. I trusted her, and I thought she trusted me. Then came that Sunday. It was one of those slow, quiet mornings. October. Crisp air outside, but we hadn't turned the heat on yet. Greta was in the shower upstairs. She had brunch plans with her friend Callie, or so she'd said. I was just going to catch the Broncos game and maybe chop some wood out back if I felt motivated. She'd left her purse on the counter. A tan leather thing that looked like it cost more than my first car. I wasn't snooping. I swear. I just needed some gum. I opened it up and started fishing around. Sunglasses. A compact. A crumpled receipt from a boutique grocery store. I spotted the familiar silver foil of a Trident pack and was reaching for it when I saw something nestled near the bottom. It was a bottle of perfume. Fancy-shaped glass, deep amber liquid inside, gold lettering on the front. Maison Francis Kirkjian Baccarat Rouge 540. I didn't know what the hell that was, but I knew it didn't come from any store I'd ever been in. I picked it up. The cap was off-center, like it had been used. I sniffed the nozzle, strong, sweet, a little spicy. It wasn't bad, just different. Not Greta's scent. Greta wore cheap cucumber melon stuff from Bath & Body Works. She said she didn't like wasting money on smells. I once bought her a bottle of Chloe for Christmas, and she barely used it. Said it gave her headaches. This bottle? This one cost money. Serious money. The price shocked me. I nearly dropped it. I heard the water stop upstairs. Footsteps. I put the bottle back where I found it, pulled out the gum, and shut the purse. I waited until she sat at the island, scrolling her phone. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. What's that new perfume in your bag? She didn't blink. Oh, that. I treated myself, she said. Bought it with my savings. Her tone was too light, like someone tossing out a line to see if it hooks. Really? I said. Didn't know you were saving up for perfume. She gave me this half laugh and shrugged. Callie wears it. I've wanted it for a while. Just finally decided to splurge. I nodded. Nice bottle. And that was it. Conversation over. She sipped her coffee, switched topics to brunch, asked me if I'd pick up firewood later. But I wasn't listening anymore. Because when I'd lifted that bottle out, there was something else under it. Folded in half, barely visible, a thin slip of paper. I hadn't meant to grab it, but it stuck to the bottom when I moved the perfume. It was a receipt. Not for the perfume. For lunch. At a hotel I'd never heard of. Downtown. 2 entrees, wine, and dessert. From Thursday. Thursday was supposed to be her work-from-home day. I'd looked at that receipt for 3 seconds. My heart skipped a beat. And then I tucked it back where I found it and zipped the purse shut. I don't know how long I stood there after she left for brunch. Probably too long. The game started, but I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat on the couch with the coffee going cold in my hands, staring at the wall. That perfume bottle? It was the start of the collapse. I just didn't know how far down I was about to go. After that Sunday, things didn't go back to normal. Not really. On the surface, sure, Greta acted like everything was fine, maybe even better than fine. But underneath it all, I felt this quiet pressure building in my chest. Like standing next to a dam you know has a crack in it. She started acting off. Too nice. Greta wasn't what you'd call a cold person, but she was usually efficient, practical, kind of clipped in how she showed affection. I always knew she cared, but it wasn't in grand gestures. Suddenly, though, I was waking up to full breakfast on weekdays. Eggs, toast, even little ramekins of jam. Thought I'd surprise you, she said, smiling like a game show host. I laughed, thanked her, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Greta didn't do surprises. She didn't do dessert on Tuesdays. That's when I decided to check our finances. We've always kept a joint checking account and separate savings accounts. Nothing fancy, just a practical setup. Greta handled most of the bill paying, and I covered groceries, house repairs, subscriptions, stuff like that. We'd never had an issue with money. But now I was curious. She'd said she bought that perfume with her savings. Fair enough. I wanted to see how much she'd been putting away. Her savings account had $17.84 in it. I refreshed the screen. Thought maybe I was looking at the wrong tab. Nope. $17. I looked at the statement history and saw it had been hovering under $20 for months. She hadn't added anything to it since July. In fact, she'd been withdrawing from it. Same amount. Weekly. Always on Thursdays. $100, give or take. It didn't make sense. Greta made more than I did, technically. Not by much, but enough. We weren't hurting for cash, so why would she be pulling bills from her savings, especially when she claimed she'd used it to buy a luxury perfume bottle just a few days before? I checked our joint account next. Everything looked normal. Bills paid. Grocery runs. A few food deliveries. But then I noticed a line I'd never seen before, $62.17 to a flower delivery service. Same Thursday as the hotel lunch receipt. She hadn't mentioned flowers. We didn't have any new ones in the house. I went back and checked again. There were 2 more charges from the same place going back 6 weeks. Always Thursdays. I didn't want to admit it, but it was getting harder to pretend everything was normal. That week, I started noticing the phone behavior too. Greta used to leave her phone on the coffee table or on the kitchen counter while we cooked. She was never one of those people glued to a screen. But now, it was practically glued to her palm. She'd bring it to the bathroom with her. Keep it tucked in her robe pocket when she walked around the house. Another thing, she'd added a passcode. And not just for unlocking the phone. She'd locked down the Notes app. I only found out because I saw her open it once while we were watching a movie. She typed in a code. I didn't say anything, just stored the moment in the back of my mind. Before all this, she used that Notes app for grocery lists. Sometimes a recipe or two. Maybe reminders about birthdays. Now it needed a password. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who pries, snoops, starts building crazy ideas in his head. I told myself it could still be innocent. Maybe she was planning something. Maybe there was a surprise party or an anniversary thing she hadn't told me about. But we didn't have anything coming up. No birthdays. No holidays. Nothing. And then came the timing. Every Thursday, she'd be out. Client meeting, she'd say, or working remotely with the team downtown. It had always sounded plausible. Her job wasn't a typical 9 to 5. But now I realized she was always gone on the same day she pulled out cash. The same day those flowers were delivered. The same day she ordered lunch for 2 at a hotel I'd never heard of. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than just a gut feeling. I wanted clarity. Proof. Certainty. I wasn't going to accuse her of anything unless I knew. Call it pride or stubbornness or just a refusal to blow up 6 years of marriage over a bottle of perfume. But I'll tell you this, I started watching her a lot closer. And the more I watched, the more I started noticing how much she didn't look at me anymore. I knew I needed answers. Real ones. Not guesses, not gut feelings. So I reached out to a guy I used to know from my tech consulting days, Tommy Morris. He was a former cop, now a licensed PI. Sharp guy, quiet, didn't ask stupid questions. We'd worked together on a fraud audit years ago, back when I was doing consulting for a supply chain firm. He'd helped expose a theft ring at one of their satellite warehouses. When I called, he remembered me right away. "What's going on, Dan?" he asked. "You sound like hell." I didn't say much. Just told him I had concerns about my wife. That something didn't add up, and I wanted someone who could look into it without tipping the boat. I wasn't trying to catch Greta in a trap. I just needed the truth. One way or another. Tommy didn't waste time. "Give me 5 days," he said. I gave him Greta's schedule, or what she told me her schedule was, along with the hotel name from the receipt and a few of the odd transactions I'd found. He asked for a recent photo of her and the car she drove. That was it. I wired him the retainer, and he got to work. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother, not my buddy Mike from work, not even my mom. I just went about the week as usual. Greta kissed me goodbye every morning. I'd pack a lunch, go to work, come home. She acted perfectly normal, like nothing in the world was wrong. And that almost made it worse. Exactly 5 days later, I received an envelope from the detective. Inside was a printed report and a flash drive. I didn't open it in the house. I went out to the shed, sat down at the old desk I used to do taxes on, and turned on the laptop I mostly used for tool manuals and hardware specs. The report was short, clean, direct, just like Tommy. Thursday, 11:22 a.m., Greta arrived at hotel, downtown. Parked in the underground garage. 11:36 a.m., Brent Matthews arrived separately. Entered the hotel lobby with a small paper bag in hand. 11:41 a.m., both parties entered room 418, registered under Matthews' business card. 1:58 p.m., Brent left. Greta exited 6 minutes later. Tommy had photos. Still frames of them walking side by side. Greta in a navy trench coat, Brent in a gray blazer with his sunglasses hooked on his shirt collar. He looked smug, comfortable, like someone who belonged there. Then I watched the video clips on the thumb drive. One of them, dated the week prior, was from a security camera in the hallway. Brent knocked. Greta opened the door. She was smiling. What got me, what truly made something twist inside me, was what he had in his hand. A bottle of Oban 18-year. My bottle. The one I'd been saving since my birthday the year before. I kept it on a shelf in the garage fridge because Greta said it smelled too strong. 3 weeks earlier, I'd noticed it was missing. I figured I'd moved it or maybe brought it to a cookout and forgot. Nope. There it was. In Brent's hand. He lifted it slightly toward her, like a joke, and she reached out and took it. They both laughed. She stepped aside and let him in. The door closed. I don't remember blinking after that. I just sat there, watching the replay. It lasted 20 seconds. I watched it 6 times. Brent Matthews. The name hadn't even crossed my mind in years. He'd been a client, one of Greta's big accounts from back when she landed that health insurance group's Christmas gala a few years ago. He was middle management then. Big on cufflinks, talked too loud. Greta once called him forgettable, which I found funny at the time because I'd caught him trying to flirt with her at our wedding. That's right, he was at our wedding. As a +1 for someone on Greta's team. And now he was the guy she was meeting at a hotel while I sat at my desk eating leftover chili from a Tupperware container. I shut the laptop and just sat there in the shed, staring at the dark window. No anger yet. Just this heavy, gray weight pressing down behind my eyes. Not rage. Not sadness. Something else. Something quieter. I hadn't just lost trust. I'd lost something I hadn't even realized I was still holding on to. I sat in the shed for a long time. The laptop was still open, the cursor blinking in the corner like it was waiting for me to do something. But I just sat there. By the time I walked back into the house, it was close to midnight. Greta had gone to bed. The hallway light was off, and the bedroom door was pulled almost shut. The only sound was the soft whir of the dishwasher drying its last cycle. Everything in the house was calm, like it always was. And that made it worse. I stood in the kitchen for a while, thinking. Then I grabbed a duffel bag from the hall closet and started packing. I didn't take much. A few days' worth of clothes, my hiking boots, a windbreaker, and my shaving kit. I packed slowly, quietly. Took my time folding each item. I left my wedding ring in the drawer. I didn't want to wear it anymore. I didn't even want to touch it. Greta had no idea I was planning to leave. I think that's what gave me a strange kind of power in that moment. I didn't have to yell or make a scene. I just had to walk away. Before I left, I went to my workbench in the garage and pulled out a small wooden box from the bottom drawer. Inside was the silver infinity necklace I'd given her on our honeymoon. She wore it every day for years. Then one day she just stopped. Said the chain was too thin and made her neck itch. I held the necklace for a minute, then grabbed a pair of wire cutters and snipped it in two. Not out of spite, more like ceremony. The thing it represented didn't exist anymore. I set the two halves on the kitchen counter. No note. No explanation. Just that. Then I grabbed my keys and left. The drive took just under 3 hours. I went west, up through the foothills, past the state park, and into the back roads where the trees get taller and the cell signal starts to fade. My buddy Clay owned a little cabin out that way. Nothing fancy, just a wood stove, a well pump, and some propane lights. He let me borrow it a few times during hunting season, and I still had the spare key. I hadn't even told him I was coming. I just drove. I got there around 4 in the morning. Let myself in, dropped my bag, and made a fire. I didn't sleep. Just sat on the couch wrapped in an old quilt, watching the flames pop and settle into coals. My body was exhausted, but my head was wide awake. Everything inside me felt both heavy and hollow at the same time. The next morning, my phone started going off. First it was Greta. Then again. A dozen missed calls, and more texts than I could count. Where are you? Can we talk? Dan, please. I'm worried. You're scaring me. I'm sorry. I turned the phone off. That same afternoon, a call came through from her mom. Then her sister. Then a coworker of mine I hadn't spoken to in weeks. It was like I'd flipped a switch and vanished, and suddenly my absence was more meaningful than anything I could have said if I'd stayed. But I didn't answer a single one. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. There's a certain kind of power in disappearing. Not to hurt someone, not to prove a point, but to protect your own peace. When someone's been lying to you day after day with a straight face, sometimes the best thing you can do is say nothing. Just let them wonder how much you know and how long you've known it. I stayed up there for 4 days. Chopped some wood. Hiked the ridge. I didn't check my email. Didn't scroll social media. I just let the weight start to lift. Slowly. I brought a notepad with me, mostly because I knew I'd need to organize my thoughts. I filled it cover to cover. I didn't write to Greta. I wrote for myself. About what I'd missed. About what I'd ignored. About how long I'd been putting my own peace second just to keep something looking whole. The night before I left the cabin, I walked down to the lake. The sky was clear. The kind of black blue you only get in the mountains. You could see every star, like they were nailed to the sky. I stood there in the cold, hands in my jacket pockets, and felt something shift in me. Not rage. Not revenge. Just resolve. I wasn't going back to the same life. Not the same version of it, anyway. After I came down from the mountains, I didn't go straight home. I stopped at my brother's place for a few days, told him I needed time to sort things out. I didn't give him the full story, just enough to explain the bags in my truck and the fact that I wasn't ready to talk about Greta. He didn't push. He just nodded and said I could stay as long as I needed. That's the kind of guy my brother is. Doesn't say much, but he shows up. While I was there, I made 2 phone calls. One to my lawyer, a guy named Mark Lively who handled the closing on our house a few years back and always struck me as sharp. The second was to a storage place in town. I needed somewhere to keep the boxes of my stuff I planned to pick up, and I didn't want Greta knowing where I'd taken them. I'd already made up my mind. I was filing. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Greta wasn't the type to take a quiet loss. She was the kind of woman who didn't like being seen as anything less than perfect. The lies she'd already told me were proof enough she'd find a way to spin this in her favor. Sure enough, 2 days after I officially filed, her response came in: desertion, mental instability, prolonged emotional absence. She claimed I'd left the house without cause, that I'd been showing signs of paranoia and emotional withdrawal for over a year. She even said I'd shouted at her in the middle of the night, something that never happened. It didn't surprise me, but it still hit me in the gut. Reading your wife's words, twisted into accusations, is like watching someone repaint your life using colors that were never there. But I wasn't going in unarmed. Mark and I had compiled the report from the PI. We had the photos, the timestamps, the receipts, the videos, all of it lined up in a neat little folder. The hardest part wasn't collecting the evidence, it was sitting through her performance once the hearing started. Greta showed up to court looking flawless, as always. Crisp blazer, pearls, even brought her mother. She cried while describing our growing distance, claimed I'd become cold, unpredictable. Her voice cracked at just the right moments. The judge nodded, scribbled things on his notepad. Her lawyer, some silver-haired guy named Chandler, went right along with it. Until I took the stand. I didn't say much, just answered what was asked. When Mark submitted the PI report into evidence, I saw Chandler shift in his seat. When the photo of Greta and Brent at the hotel door came up on the screen, his hand went to his tie, loosened it just a touch. Then came the video, the one with the scotch bottle. The courtroom was silent, just the hum of the ceiling fan and the click of the projector. Greta's face changed. Not panic, exactly, more like calculation. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead. When Mark asked me if I recognized the bottle Brent was holding, I said, yes. That was a gift from my brother for my 35th birthday. It went missing from our garage fridge 3 weeks before the video was taken. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't glare. I just told the truth. Chandler started to sweat. He fumbled with his pen. When Mark mentioned hotel by name, Chandler's hand visibly trembled. He asked for a recess not long after. In the hallway, I stood near the vending machines while Mark took a call. Chandler stepped out of a conference room, talking with Greta in hushed tones. He looked nervous. She looked annoyed. After the hearing that day, Mark pulled me aside. "You want to know something weird?" he asked. "Always," I said. "That law firm Greta hired? She's used them before." I frowned. "For what?" "Confidentiality settlement. Some years back. Workplace-related. Something about a coworker and what the paperwork called an unresolved romantic entanglement. Sealed case, of course, but I've seen the name in our system before." I didn't say anything right away. Just stood there, letting that sink in. Maybe Brent wasn't the first. Maybe this wasn't new behavior, just the first time she'd slipped up enough to get caught. The dots started connecting. Her ease with lying. How fast she pivoted when I questioned her. The way she controlled the story before I even said a word. Maybe I'd been in the dark longer than I thought. Back in the courtroom, the judge didn't say much at the close of the day. He told us a decision would be made after reviewing the financials and evidence. Greta still had her chin high, but she wasn't smiling. Neither was I. We walked out of the courthouse in opposite directions. She didn't look back, and I didn't stop walking. I showed up to the last hearing alone. No family, no friends. I didn't need support. I needed closure. Greta came in wearing that same beige coat she always wore when she wanted to look put together. She didn't look at me. Not once. Her mother was with her again, holding a tissue she hadn't used. Chandler, her lawyer, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Rosen entered the room, glasses low on his nose, flipping through the folder like he'd already made up his mind. When he started reading the ruling, his voice was calm but clipped. No drama. No long speeches. Just the facts. The house? Mine. I had bought it before we got married, and Greta hadn't contributed to the mortgage except on 2 months I'd covered for her anyway. Her attorney tried to claim shared home equity, but the judge wasn't having it. The boat? Also mine. I'd paid for it with a work bonus from 3 years ago and kept all the maintenance records. Greta hated that boat. Called it a toy for bored men with nothing left to prove. But that didn't stop her from posting pictures of herself on it all summer, cocktail in hand, smiling with that perfectly staged expression like she was living the dream. The stocks and IRA? Untouched. Pre-marriage assets, clearly documented, and my lawyer had all the paperwork ready. Greta didn't even glance up when that part was read. Then came the big one. Alimony. Denied. Judge Rosen used a phrase I'll never forget. He said Greta's testimony was strategically deceptive, that she'd made several statements under oath that were inconsistent with the evidence presented. He didn't call her a liar outright, but he came real close. Chandler tried to push for reconsideration. Said the affair shouldn't void her right to spousal support. Said I'd embarrassed her by submitting video evidence and weaponized surveillance. The judge shut him down with one sentence. "Your client created the situation, Mr. Chandler. We're merely acknowledging it." I signed the final documents a week later at Mark's office. When I left, he clapped me on the back and said, "Clean break, Dan. You did the right thing." It didn't feel like a win. It felt like walking out of a burned-down house with a box of old photos and nothing else. Relief, sure, but also this dull ache in the chest. I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd lost the version of myself that believed in her. A few weeks passed. I kept to myself mostly. Then one afternoon, I got a message. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. The text was short. "She's done this before, Dan. Just not this messy." I stared at it for a while. Thought maybe it was a prank. Or maybe Chandler trying to stir the pot again. But then I looked closer at the number and realized it had an area code from Illinois. It took me a minute, but I remembered. Amy, one of Greta's bridesmaids. Tall, dark hair, wore a navy blue dress and danced with my cousin Rob at our wedding. She and Greta were roommates in college, and I always got the sense that she kept her distance on purpose. She moved out of state not long after we got married. I hadn't heard from her since. I didn't respond. I didn't need more stories. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that started to grow in the pit of my stomach, that maybe Brent wasn't the first, and I just never saw the rest of the picture. Maybe Greta had left other messes behind her, and I was just the one who finally didn't let her get away with it. I thought back on little things. Times she'd laughed off questions, changed subjects, got defensive over harmless comments. I remembered once asking about an old photo of her with a guy I didn't recognize, and she said, "Don't dig up boring history." Maybe it wasn't boring. Maybe it was just buried. Looking back now, I realize Greta didn't leave wreckage in her wake the way a tornado does. No, she was quieter, like a fire that looks controlled until you find out the beams are hollowed out behind the walls. By the time the smoke clears, everything still looks like a house. But it's not. It's ash held together by habit. And I'd been living inside it for years. It had been 3 years since I saw her. A lot can change in that kind of time. Faces age a little. Habits change. I was at Whole Foods of all places, a Saturday morning kind of trip. I was by the seafood counter when I saw her. Greta. She came out from the frozen aisle and stepped into view like someone walking back into a dream you thought you'd forgotten. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her hair was shorter, just past her chin. She looked thinner, too. Not sick, just worn down. Her face still had that same structure, the one that could freeze a room or light it up depending on her mood. But something was gone. That sharpness, that edge that made people step back a little when she looked at them. She didn't see me at first. I probably could have walked away, ducked down a different aisle, avoided the whole thing. But I didn't move. I froze. Not from fear or panic, just a kind of stillness. Like my body wanted to know what she would do. Then her eyes caught mine. She stopped, right there between 2 carts and a rack of bagged coffee. "Dan," she said. Her voice cracked in the middle of my name. Same voice, but softer. She stepped closer, like she couldn't quite believe it was me. For a second, I didn't say anything. I just took her in. The coat she wore was fraying near the cuffs. Her nails were unpolished. She looked like someone trying to hold it together. She was wearing the perfume. The same one. The Baccarat Rouge 540. That deep, heady sweetness that clung to the back of my mind like a scar. The moment it hit my nose, I was back in our old kitchen, staring at that little bottle in her purse, wondering why the woman I loved had suddenly become a stranger. "Can we talk?" she asked, her eyes darting around like she was afraid someone else might overhear. I shook my head once. No. Her mouth opened a little, like she was going to argue, but then she caught herself. She took a half step closer instead. "I miss you," she said, quiet now. "I made a mistake. Please. I'm so alone." I looked down. Her left hand was bare. Not just missing a ring, but scarred where one used to sit. The skin was slightly lighter there, a pale band of memory around her finger. She folded her arms across her chest, like she was cold. I didn't ask how she was. Didn't ask what happened. I didn't need to. Her face said enough. "I'm doing okay now," I told her. "Don't mess that up." I didn't wait for a response. I turned and headed for the checkout. I could feel her eyes on me the whole time, but she didn't call out. Didn't follow. Not at first. When I reached the doors, I grabbed a paper bag from the stack and slipped my things inside. The cashier gave me the usual half smile. I stepped into the cold, and just as I reached for my keys, the wind shifted. There it was again. The perfume. Fainter this time, but unmistakable. That same mix of sugar and something metallic underneath. It floated through the air like a whisper you hear behind a closed door. I turned my head slightly and saw her, just past the windows, watching me from the inside. She hadn't walked out. She was just standing there, hands stuffed in her coat pockets, half hidden by the reflection of the parking lot lights on the glass. She wasn't crying. She wasn't waving. Just watching. Waiting. I didn't wave either. I just got in my truck, started the engine, and drove off. The scent didn't leave me for miles. It stuck to my jacket, or maybe just to my memory. I rolled down the windows, hoping the cold air would cut through it, but it didn't. Some things don't blow away that easy. They linger. They settle in your chest, behind your ribs, like a song you can't stop humming even though you don't like the tune. I didn't look back, and I didn't wonder what she would have said if I had stayed. Whatever it was, it didn't matter anymore. Do I regret it? No. Not walking out. Not staying silent. Not leaving without yelling or demanding an explanation I already had in my hands. Greta thought she could outmaneuver me. Thought if she stayed calm, if she played her parts just right, she could talk her way through anything. She was used to people listening to her version of things, changing their minds, letting her spin the story until even the truth got dizzy and sat down. Everything that came after, every late lunch, every lie, every quiet insult dressed up as a joke, it all grew out of that first crack. And once you see the crack, you can't unsee it. In the years since, I've kept to myself. I don't go looking for new drama. I spend time at the lake. Got into woodworking again. I make shelves, mostly. One for the garage. One for the laundry room. I don't sell them. I just like seeing something go from a pile of boards to something useful. Something solid. People ask me sometimes if I'll date again. Maybe. Maybe not. I'm not against it. But I've learned to enjoy quiet. I've learned that peace, real peace, feels different than comfort. It doesn't need noise. It doesn't need validation. It just is. And silence, I've learned, can be the loudest answer you'll ever give someone. Some stories don't need an epilogue. They just need an ending. And this was mine. Quiet. Simple. Honest. Just like it should have been from the start. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think silence is more powerful than confrontation in situations like this? Why or why not? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.